We're watching Buzz with Jess Lujan and John Davis.
Hey, we're back, and we're talking about self-determination with Executive Director of the Commission on Decolonization, Ed Alvarez. Ed, we're talking about knocking on wrong doors. What doors do we seem to be knocking on repeatedly and maybe being answered by the wrong person or giving the wrong answers, maybe asking the wrong questions? Where should we be knocking, and how should we be doing this?
You know, I guess so much it wasn't that we were knocking on the wrong doors, it's just that we were new to this experience in self-determination. And we probably, you know, went by our gut feeling on who to talk to. In the 80s, we were talking to rear admirals, you know, and they, you know, they take their orders from Pentagon. So we didn't know at that time probably that they didn't make any decisions. And that has been the history from people I've talked to that were close to this issue, is that even with the usage of lobbyists, you know, lobbyists will get you a meeting with a high official, but that high official in Washington doesn't make a decision. But now you see the landscape change. You see now that there is something on the table that the Department of Defense wants. Namely, they want Pocket right now, and we don't know what else they want, what else they're going to take for this military buildup. You know, so really there's a lot of dynamics now that are playing here, but we have to take full advantage of any bargaining chip we have.
Now, Ed, we've had in the past, I mean, not just the past few years, but years past, where people have gone to the United Nations. Some of our representatives have gone to the United Nations. There are a few resolutions out there that identify, again, the indigenous folks and the right to self-determine their political status. Basically, there are resolutions there that have already been passed. But also, lately we've got, of course, different countries who did not want to recognize, some of the self-determining issues of countries there. And the United States was kind of on the borderline. I think they're moving towards that. If they already signed off, I know Australia, I think, signed off on that. But again, how do we move forward? Are you going to be able to call some of these people in, and some of these resolutions that were introduced and ratified in the United Nations to help the cause of a colonized people, in which we are. I mean, we are colonized.
That's right. And interesting you should mention that, because during Jimmy Carter's administration, he quoted a quote from John F. Kennedy to the United Nations via his UN ambassador. And what they basically said was that the United States realized that at one time they were a colony. They understood the exploitation, the misrepresentation, and the colonialization of them. So they understood what it meant to be a colony, and they fully supported, self-determination for non-governing non-governing island nations and countries. So it's ironic how they would agree to that, but defy the resolutions, and defy it, and it's not uncommon. The United States often, they do not comply with UN policies.
They do not practice what they preach.
Well, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, one of the things, the latest things, basically, on February 4th, with the situation in Egypt, and still ongoing at this point, remains to be seen what's going to happen over there. But the very first press release, and I guess it wasn't a conference, it was just a statement that was made by President Obama, and this was February 4th, when he came out. And this one paragraph I want to read here, because we can substitute Egypt for Guam, where he says the people of Egypt have rights that are universal. That includes the right to peaceful assembly and association, the right to free speech, and the ability to determine their own destiny. And these are human rights, and that the United States will stand up for them everywhere. When I read that, I said, thank you for saying that. This is because that doesn't just apply in Egypt. We can read the people of Guam have the rights that are universal, that include the right to peaceful assembly and association, the right to free speech, and the ability to determine their own destiny. These are human rights. The United States will stand up for them everywhere. And everything that he said in this two-page statement that has to do with Egypt, you just substitute the word Egypt for Guam, and it works perfectly for our situation. But why is it that everywhere else we go and preach? Why is it that our chief executive, President Obama, preaches democracy, wanting democracy for other countries, yet within the territory of Guam, the territory of the United States, that they're not practicing what they're preaching to other countries?
I think, go back again in history, the only time the United States addresses issues that are important to us is when there's a relationship issue with them. For example, now you see the resurgence of political status surrounding the Pagat issue. And it's usually, throughout the history, you've seen it's always a relationship issue between Guam and the United States that people begin to rally around, protecting the island, protecting its land, protecting its culture. So, you asked, why don't we get the same treatment? Well, because they didn't have anything to negotiate. But now they do. Now they have this military buildup, and you have a footprint that seems to be changing all the time. So that's where the impetus to me lies.
Now, but let me ask you this. Again, if I were to ask you today, and if you had all the equipment to work with at this point, what do you think the earliest that a plebiscite can happen?
I think 3 years.
3 years?
3 years.
Within the three-year period of time, definitely the Pagat situation probably would have been settled one way or another. They're going to take it or not. The military would have already started. I know it's a prolonged build-up at this point because of economic issues, not just in the United States, but also in Japan. So it's been prolonged to our benefit at this point, right? But the fact remains is 3 years down the line, issues would have been resolved. Would we still have enough leverage? Would we still have the leverage to be able to get our political destiny, decide our political destiny, not having, again, these areas like the Pagats, taking of more land maybe, wouldn't that have been decided, you think, already?
That's true. Hopefully, most likely it would have been, but you never know what other compelling issues might come up that will dictate further discussion. And on the other hand, like you said, we don't know what would be there. But that's why it's up to us, up to Team Guam, to have one approach, one voice, and have compelling reasons on why we deserve whatever it is that we're asking for. And I think that's always been, the crux of the matter is it is not compelling enough to the point where at the same time where they needed something.
There we go.